Amid the quiet beauty of the farm, Toan stumbles upon Diem's hidden journal, pages soaked in tears that reveal a heartbreaking truth. She never stopped loving him, but left out of fear of forcing him to choose between filial duty and love. Devastated yet awakened, Toan vows never to let her go again. But fate takes a sharp turn when Madame Vong accidentally discovers the journal, placing Diem's deepest secret on the brink of exposure. What will happen when the truth can no longer stay hidden? Subscribe now and join us on this emotional journey of love and sacrifice. The late afternoon sun spilled its last golden rays across the fields, painting the quiet farm in hues of amber and rust. Toan pushed open the wooden door of the small room that once belonged to Diem. Dust motes floated lazily in the light that streamed through the cracked shutters, and the air smelled faintly of old wood and lavender, the scent she used to love. Every corner of the room was still touched by her presence, a scarf forgotten on the chair, a chipped ceramic cup resting on the windowsill, and the faint outline of where her photographs once hung on the wall. He had returned to this room countless times, but tonight felt different. His heart urged him to search, to find something, anything, that could bridge the chasm she had left behind. As he moved the small writing desk away from the wall, a hidden compartment of the bottom drawer scraped open. Inside, wrapped in yellowing paper, lay a small leather-bound notebook. Toan's breath caught in his throat. His trembling fingers brushed away the dust, and he recognized the delicate imprint of her handwriting on the first page. With a hesitance that bordered on fear, he opened it. The ink was slightly smudged, but the words were painfully clear. I did not leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I knew your mother would never accept me. I cannot bear to watch you torn between duty and love. If one of us must suffer, let it be me. Toan's eyes burned as he read line after line, each sentence pulling him deeper into the storm of her heart. She had written of sleepless nights, of crying into her pillow so he would not see her weakness, of watching him smile while knowing that smile could vanish once his family forced him to choose. She had written of fear, fear not of him, but of becoming the wedge that destroyed the bond between a son and his mother. Every word carved itself into Toan's chest like a blade. He saw her again in his mind, the way her lips trembled when she said goodbye, the coldness she forced into her voice that day, and the way she refused to look back as she walked away. He had believed her silence meant indifference. He had cursed himself for not being enough to hold her. But here, in these pages, lay the truth. She had loved him so fiercely that she chose to break her own heart rather than see him torn apart. His hands shook as he turned the pages. Some were stained, as though her tears had blurred the ink. One entry, written late into the night, nearly undid him. If he ever finds this, I hope he knows, my love has never left. It only hides where no one can see. Toan pressed the journal to his chest, unable to breathe. The world outside seemed to blur, the hum of cicadas fading into silence. All that remained was the echo of her voice in those words, reaching out across the gulf of time and distance. He wanted to shout her name, to run to wherever she was and demand why she had carried this burden alone. But the room, empty and still, gave him no answer. For the first time in months, tears slid freely down his cheeks. They fell not from despair, but from the overwhelming, piercing truth: Diem had never abandoned their love. She had only hidden it, buried beneath sacrifice and silence. And now, with this fragile book in his hands, Toan knew with certainty he could never let her go again. Night fell softly over the farm, draping the fields in silver moonlight. The cicadas had grown quiet, replaced by the low hum of crickets and the whisper of wind brushing through the tall grass. Toan sat outside on the old wooden porch, the leather-bound journal pressed tightly against his chest as though it were the only thing tethering him to her. His eyes, red and swollen from hours of reading, gazed into the darkness where the horizon melted into the night. He had read every word, every confession of her pain, until the ink seemed burned into his soul. Now, as he sat alone beneath the endless sky, he felt both devastated and strangely alive. Devastated because he could finally grasp the weight of her suffering. Alive because, hidden between those desperate lines, was undeniable proof Diem's love for him had never wavered. The night air was cool, carrying with it the earthy scent of soil freshly turned earlier that day. He lifted his head and stared at the stars. Once, long ago, he and Diem had sat on this very porch, counting constellations like children. She had laughed when he pointed out the wrong stars, teasing him for always being too serious. He could almost hear that laughter again, faint but real, carried on the wind. "I was blind," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I thought you left because you didn't care. But you carried this pain alone, just to protect me." His words dissolved into the night, but he spoke them anyway, as if the stars themselves would carry them to her. A deep ache swelled in his chest. He thought of the countless mornings he had woken up to silence, reaching for someone who was no longer there. He thought of the days when anger had consumed him, convincing himself she had betrayed him, moved on, stopped loving him. How foolish he had been. She hadn't moved on, she had simply hidden herself in shadows so he could shine without guilt. He opened the journal again, flipping back to the page where her words trembled with despair. "If one of us must suffer, let it be me." Toan closed his eyes, clenching his jaw. "No," he murmured fiercely. "Not anymore. I won't let you suffer alone." I won't let you bear this pain for both of us." The conviction rose inside him like fire. His mother's disapproval, his sister's anger, my Hung's persistence, none of it mattered now. All the fears that had once tied his hands seemed so small compared to the truth in these pages. Diem had chosen sacrifice because she thought he would bend under the weight of choice. But he would show her she had been wrong. He was stronger now. Strong enough to defy his family, strong enough to endure the storm, strong enough to fight for her. Toan leaned back, resting his head against the porch beam. Above him, the night sky stretched endlessly, the Milky Way glowing faintly like a river of light. He remembered how Diem used to say that stars were promises people forgot to keep. Tonight, he made his own promise, carving it deep into his heart. No matter how long it takes, I will bring you back. I will make you see that our love is worth more than fear, more than duty, more than anything else in this world. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint rustle of leaves in the orchard. For a fleeting moment, he felt as though she were there, standing at the edge of the field, watching him. He almost rose, almost called her name. But the vision dissolved into shadow. Still, the warmth of that illusion remained, fueling his resolve. Holding the journal close, Toan finally allowed a small, weary smile to curve his lips. His heart still ached, but beneath the ache was steel. The kind of strength that only love could forge. As dawn's first light began to brush the horizon, he whispered into the breaking silence, "Wait for me, Diem. Just a little longer. I'm coming for you." The days slipped by quietly, each one wrapped in the rhythm of farm life. Toan poured himself into the work, tending to the animals, watering the crops, mending fences, all with the steady determination of a man waiting for something greater than the harvest. Yet no matter how busy his hands became, his heart always returned to the fragile leather journal. He kept it close, sometimes carrying it in his pocket, sometimes placing it by his bedside as though the words within were a lifeline. One afternoon, when the sun hung high and Toan was in the fields repairing a broken irrigation pipe, the silence of the farmhouse was broken by the soft creak of the front door. Madame Vong stepped inside slowly. Leaning on her cane, her frail figure moving carefully across the familiar wooden floorboards. She had come to the farm to retrieve a jar of herbal medicine Diem had once left behind, something she used often when her joints flared with pain. The house smelled faintly of smoke and earth, of days spent cooking and nights spent by the fire. She paused at the threshold of Diem's old room, curiosity tugging her forward. The door was half open, and inside she spotted a notebook lying on the desk, its worn leather cover catching the light. Something about it seemed out of place, as though it had been recently touched. Madame Vong hesitated. She was not the type to pry into the belongings of others. But there was a strange pull, a quiet voice urging her closer. Slowly, she picked it up, her fingers brushing over the cracked spine. She opened the first page, and froze. The handwriting was unmistakable. Delicate, slanted, each letter carrying the weight of someone who wrote with both care and sorrow. It was Diem's. Her eyes scanned the words, and with every line her heart tightened. I did not leave because I stopped loving him. I left because I knew his mother would never accept me. Madame Vong's lips parted in shock. Her vision blurred for a moment as she tried to take in what she was reading. Diem's pain unfolded in front of her, nights of loneliness, fears of rejection, the choice to disappear not out of betrayal but out of love. The old woman sank slowly into the chair by the desk, the journal trembling in her hands. She had believed Diem's silence was a kind of resignation, a quiet acceptance of fate. But here, in these pages, was the truth. Diem had never let go. Instead, she had shouldered the burden of sacrifice alone. Tears welled in her eyes as she turned another page. There were mentions of herself, of the mother she was caring for, of her frailty, of her gratitude for being taken in. Diem had written of her love for Toan, but also of her duty to remain, to serve, to stay hidden rather than cause turmoil in his life. Madame Vong closed the book gently, her fingers resting on the leather cover as though it were something sacred. She could feel her chest tighten with guilt. All this time, she had thought she was simply the recipient of Diem's kindness, that the girl's decision to stay by her side was born of gratitude or circumstance. But now she knew better. It was sacrifice. Pure, unrelenting sacrifice. Her breath came in shallow bursts, and she pressed a hand to her mouth, whispering softly, "Oh, child. What have you done to yourself?" At that moment, footsteps sounded outside, the heavy tread of Toan returning from the fields. Madame Vong quickly wiped her eyes, but her heart was racing. She set the journal back on the desk, though her hands lingered on it for a moment longer. Should she confront him? Should she confront Diem? Should she stay silent and let the secret remain hidden? As the door swung open and Toan stepped inside, wiping sweat from his brow, Madame Vong forced a thin smile. But her gaze lingered on him, filled with questions and an unspoken burden. For the first time, she carried a truth that could unravel everything, and she knew the time was coming when someone would have to speak it aloud.